Today we have a great malicious compliance story done exactly by the book. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, we're working too fast? Okay, we'll slow down for you. I recently found this sub and I think I have a great story for it. This happened about 2 years ago. I work in construction, but more specifically, I cut concrete. A lot of people aren't familiar with my job, but all you really need to know is that I don't pour any concrete. I use big diesel and hydraulic powered saws to cut and remove it. I work at a relatively small company, 15 employees, and we are the company to use for concrete cutting and removal in our area. I was the first employee hired at this company, and my bosses are amazing. They've been in the industry for 25 and 30 years respectively. We will call them Brad and Cody. They know what they're doing, and they still get out and work in the field and will outwork any of our employees. We were awarded a no-bid contract at a very large facility to cut and remove a very large section of their outdoor slab because it had cracked. This was routine for us. We could do it in our sleep, but it was still a large project. The reason we were given the contract but not held to a number was because they wanted it done right and fast, and they knew we were the guys to do this, even though we weren't always the cheapest. The customer requested us to bring extra equipment and specialized saws just in case. Important later. The day comes that we're supposed to start, and they wanted us on site at 6:30 a.m. for a safety meeting. Brad and Cody went out while I stayed back to get my crews ready for the day before heading out to meet them. When I arrived at 8 a.m., they were still standing by their trucks just talking. I asked them how the safety meeting went, and they said that no one had shown up yet. Finally, they got there at around 9 a.m. and didn't even acknowledge that they were late. We met the guy that was in charge of the project. His name was John. John said during the safety meeting that there would always be a few people around from his company to watch us while we worked. We figured it was weird, but no big deal. We ran a routine safety meeting after, and it was time to work. We got about a third of the project completed in one day. The entire time we were working, there were no less than 25 people standing around watching us work. We kept joking with them to just set up bleachers. It would be easier to watch that way. They made us call it quits at 4 p.m. so they could go home. Right about this time, we started to figure there was something up with these guys. They didn't care that we didn't get started until late and wanted us to end early, yet a big part of us being there was to get it done fast. Either way, we figured we would still be able to get done in about 3 days and make record time for a project of this size, all while making a fair amount of money for ourselves. The next morning, as we were getting ready to head out for the day, Brad received an email. It said, "While we can tell that X company are master operators with their machines, we feel as if they're operating in an unsafe manner by running multiple machines at once, and request that they slow down to maintain safe working conditions. They also didn't try to make sure our supervisors felt that they were safe throughout the day." Brad was ticked. We were called in to get things done fast, and not once had we done a single thing that could be considered unsafe. When we got to the job that day for the safety meeting, Brad had changed from "screw these guys, they don't know anything about what we're doing" to "okay, we're too fast, we'll slow it right down for them." At the safety meeting, John, the same guy who sent us the email, looked at us and said, "Okay, everyone knows what we're doing, let's get it done." He tried to end the safety meeting with that, but that's when my boss spoke up. He said, "Hold on, since no man is man enough to tell us in person and just want to hide behind their emails, let's get this straight. We are too fast and unsafe for you?" John became visibly uncomfortable and stammered out, "Well, there was a lot of people standing around and watching you yesterday, and I just felt that someone would get hurt if they decided to get closer to watch." I had set up safety cones with red danger tape strung between it and told no one to cross. We had taken proper safety precautions. If they didn't feel comfortable to have that many people watch, then don't have that many people standing watching and doing nothing. All Brad said was, "Okay, we will be real slow, and if someone crosses our line, we shut the site down for an hour for another safety meeting." Time for the malicious compliance. We started up for the day. Something to note about our saws, tractors, and other heavy equipment is that we have the ability to turn up the idle, or in other words, we can turn up or down the speed of the motors. So instead of everything moving normally and how it should, which is fast, everything is moving at turtle speed. Brad told us all that if we ever sped up our machines, that he would kick us off the job, even Cody, his business partner. I was cutting with our saw while Cody was in the excavator to remove the pieces that I cut. Brad was in the skid steer to haul the pieces to the dump truck. I would cut the concrete into a 6 foot by 6 foot piece, which would normally take me about 20 to 30 minutes. It was taking upwards of 3 hours for one piece. After I would cut, Cody in the excavator would turn his machine on, slowly turn and stop. Extend his bucket, stop, lower the bucket, stop, tilt the bucket, stop, pick up the piece, stop, turn, stop, drop the piece, stop, shut off his machine, all without idling up. Then Brad would start his machine and repeat the same process to load into the dump truck. You get the point. It was painfully slow. After the first piece was ready to be pulled out and Cody started the process, John, who was just sitting on the sideline pale-faced, crossed my line to ask if we were really serious. At that point, Brad screamed, "Shut down," and we all stepped away for an hour for a safety meeting. John crossed the line 3 times in the first day and 8 times total throughout the project. His employees never once crossed the danger line. Effectively, John was the only one he should have been worried about in his email about getting too close and being in danger. John kept saying, "No way you guys are being serious. What happened to what you were doing yesterday? You were much more efficient." Brad just said, "I have in writing that you felt unsafe, so for the remainder of this project we will be operating at a safe pace." It ended up taking us 3 weeks to finish at that horribly slow pace instead of 3 or 4 days at full speed. The best part? The head of the facility came out to see what was taking us so long. We showed him the email, and he agreed with what we were doing. He told us he hates John and that he's insufferable to work around. He said that the success of this project is directly tied to John's yearly bonus. He asked how much we were charging them, and we told him that per piece of equipment and truck and saw that is on the site is being billed to them by the hour, and that John had requested that we nearly double the amount of equipment that we actually needed or used. The facility head just laughed and said, "Fantastic. I'll make sure you're paid in full. Don't go easy on us with the bill." That's how we maliciously complied our way into charging about $200,000 for a job that should have realistically only been worth about $45,000. I even got a solid $20,000 bonus because Brad and Cody are fantastic bosses and knew we made a killing on that job. So, I don't know how much training I need to do, but can I also come start working for Brad and Cody? And particularly, can we also go and see if John will re-up for a new contract somewhere, please? It just, sounds extremely nice. T. James V commented, "Holy freak, I lolled when John crossed the line. Like, dude, you were warned. Did he never cave and tell you to forget the email and return to a normal pace? What a blockhead." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy great stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, ordered to do maintenance on a grill without the right equipment. Grill was broken trying anyways. Another fun story about my favorite supervisor from when I was in the Navy, a little bit of backstory to help explain some of the later facts. In the military, every piece of equipment gets preventative maintenance done on it to maintain it in good working condition. In the Navy, we have a very well laid out maintenance system with step-by-step instructions on how to do every bit of maintenance, with instructions so simple a monkey could do it. Part of these maintenance procedures lists required tools, parts, materials, and test equipment, and they're also extremely specific, detailing the length requirement of your screwdrivers, the brand of your gauges, etc. The management of this system the Navy uses is called the Maintenance and Material Management System, 3M, or Planned Maintenance System, PMS. As an electrician, we owned all electrical distribution equipment on board, and for jobs without an electrical training background, we also owned the actual equipment. So the electronics technicians with electrical training could maintain their own electrical equipment. But the cooks, culinary specialists, without an electrical background, relied on us to maintain their equipment for them. Now, if you've ever used a commercial flat-top grill or griddle before, you know you set it to a specific temperature you want the cooktop heated to, and not a 0 to 9 dial like your stove at home. Part of maintaining the griddle was checking the calibration of this temperature setting once every year or two. I forget how often this check was, but it wasn't a frequent check. Relatively early on when I got on board the ship, young EMFN, junior electrician OP, was assigned to do this maintenance check. So I gathered all of my tools, parts, materials, etc. In doing so, I couldn't find the proper temperature sensor for our calibrated temperature gauge. We had the round-tip ambient temperature probe for use in the ovens, but not the flat-tip surface temperature probe for use on a griddle. I asked a different supervisor to my favorite supervisor for help, and he couldn't find it either, so he ordered a new one, and he said he would take care of the paperwork for the maintenance check. Being new and unfamiliar with the system, I let it go and never questioned when the maintenance check disappeared from the maintenance list the next week, meaning someone accomplished it, hint hint, nudge nudge, and all was good. The next time this maintenance check came up due, we were on deployment and it was again assigned to me. By this time, we had a new supervisor and I was now EM3, slightly less junior electrician, OP. A bit more knowledgeable, I looked where we kept all of our calibrated equipment and couldn't find the flat-top temperature probe I knew I needed, so I asked my supervisor. He found we had one on order but didn't know that we had one in the shop and told me to figure it out. Knowing that was an unlawful order and would amount to lying about the check and could bite me in the butt later, I said I wouldn't do the maintenance without the right equipment. And since he couldn't lawfully order me to, we started putting a note on the check that the tools were on order and delaying it. This went on for about 2 to 3 months until the check was about to go red, move out of periodicity and cause negative numbers on our maintenance reports, and I was again ordered to figure it out or I'd be written up. I refused and raised the same issue to my boss's boss, and we tore the shop apart trying to find the right equipment but couldn't find it, so he told me not to worry about it. Later that week, while I was on watch as a roving watchstander, allowed to walk around the ship and even required to after dinner one evening, I saw a newer, more junior electrician. Let's call him EMFA Timmy. Even more junior than I initially was, electrician, in the galley, kitchen, working on the griddle. I took a step into the galley and asked him what he was doing, and lo and behold, he was doing the maintenance check. I asked him what temperature probe he was using, and he showed me the one for the oven. I explained to him the issue and told him that if he signed the maintenance check, it would be gun decking, lying on official paperwork, and he could get in trouble. But let him make his own decisions as an adult. He decided to continue doing the check. I giggled and continued on with my watch. After my watch, it was nearly 10 p.m., so I went to bed for the night. About an hour later, I got woken up being told my supervisor needed me in the galley. I sighed, figuring it was about the check and I was going to get that earlier threatened write-up. After getting dressed and making it to the galley, the entire electrical shop was in the galley troubleshooting the griddle. You see, EMFA Timmy got to the step in the PMS where it said to use a screwdriver to adjust the dial until the thermometer read the same temperature indicated by the set temperature. When he measured it, it was off by about 150 degrees, so he kept turning up the heat. Eventually, it was hot enough to melt the griddle's built-in over-temp protection device, instantly shutting the stovetop off. Turns out he did need that temperature probe. I was tasked with helping come up with a solution to fix it, because the griddle was a critical piece of equipment for the cooks, and we had no replacement parts to fix it. I asked EMFA Timmy if he ever finished the last steps of the maintenance card, turning the grill off, putting it back together, reporting completion of the PMS. He told me he hadn't. I turned to my boss and said since the maintenance check I explicitly advised against doing without the proper tools was still ongoing and I was informed I could do the maintenance or be written up, I would stick with my original decision and refuse to do the maintenance. He could write me up in the morning during working hours, but in the meantime, I was going back to bed. Have a nice night. In the morning, I did indeed get written up, but for the insubordination, not for refusing the maintenance check, while my boss's boss looked on with the biggest crap-eating grin at me for holding my ground, and my supervisor was ticked at me. Turns out I was right and we couldn't do that maintenance check without the right equipment. This remains one of my write-ups I am least ashamed to have ever gotten, and I'd take it again in a heartbeat to give a giant "I told you so" middle finger to idiot middle managers. I later found an electronic record of the counseling chat my supervisor got for tasking people with doing maintenance without the proper equipment. Because I laid out that this was a known issue, we didn't have the right probe for years, and threw his butt deep under the bus. Hated the guy. We got the right probe in about 6 months later. You know, there's two crazy things to me about this story. You're on a ship, right? I feel like in that scenario, you would want to make sure that this gets dealt with properly and raise the issue up to the right channels, because two of the most important things, anything electrical facing on a ship, and also the quality of your food. I mean, when you're out at sea, you want to be able to make sure the chef can do their thing, right? Fishhook U2K commented, "Here's one for you being an electrician. This was a E5 sonar tech. I believe I was doing PMs on a piece of sonar gear, had a screwdriver or something poking inside with the top cover off. He got shocked, stood back and said, 'That shouldn't have done that,' and then did it again. We were rolling around radio across the hall laughing. I think he only had one bus tagged out." Gwen BD94 commented, "Listen, go easy on the guy. I've been there. Went to work on a dryer that had been tagged out for a year and got shocked. Initial jump and confusion. That shouldn't have done that. Tested again to make sure I got shocked by that line and not something else close by to trace the source of the live electricity. Got shocked again. Check the tag out. It's tagged out. Assume it's the wrong breaker. Turn off every other breaker on the panel that feeds the dryer. Test the shock again. Get shocked. At this point, getting real fed up that this dang dryer won't just turn off already. Turn off the entire panel, one more panel upstream, test it again, no shock. After we fixed the dryer and I tried to figure out what went wrong, I realized the original person who tagged the dryer out of service tagged the breaker in the on position instead of the off, and I hadn't noticed. Our next story is, got reprimanded for not leaving my uniforms at work, so now I didn't have any uniforms at home when it mattered. A couple of years ago, I was in the Navy and assigned duties on board a ship. At the start of the story, I was an extremely junior service member, lowest rank in my shop. Typically, on board the ship, our usual uniform was coveralls in our department, and we arrived and left from the ship when in home port in civilian clothes. Now, we were moving up the river, about 4 hours underway, about an hour's driving distance, for a week to unload weapon stores for a training exercise underway coming up later that month. Typically, when leaving the area of the port of record, which we would for the training exercise, we're also required to have suitable transit uniforms aboard in case we pull into port elsewhere. For this week-long weapons unload, I had no plans to leave the ship, and we weren't leaving our port of record's geographical area and would be returning to our home berth again before the upcoming trip, so I didn't prep my uniforms to bring on board, seeing no use for them. At the last minute, our medical department scheduled medical appointments on our behalf at a small satellite clinic at the weapons station, with no input of our own, and informed me I'd have a dental appointment while there. I immediately went to my supervisor with the issue because I had no suitable uniforms for off-ship use on board, and we were required to attend medical appointments in uniform. I get written up for not having my uniforms. Now, there's no specific policies on which types or how many uniforms are required to be on board, but there are specific policies on having sea bag inspections and what is required to be present for them. So my write-up was for not having an inspection-ready sea bag available. Copy that, makes sense. When we get home that weekend, I move all of my military uniforms aboard, bringing a full inspection-ready sea bag to the ship as required and leaving no uniforms at home. Everything's peachy. Fast forward a few years, and I have commanding officer's approval to miss an upcoming late-minute rescheduled underway due to prior scheduled leave in order to re-enlist. While I'm halfway across the country re-enlisting, my department fails an important inspection for our deployment workups. The inspectors work with the ship's command to reschedule, and they adjust the underway schedule last minute again. Now they're getting underway for a re-inspect the night before my leave ends, and the re-inspection starts the day I return from leave. The inspectors will be ferried to the ship the morning of by water taxi. They ask me to curtail my leave a day early, buy new tickets, and show up to help with this re-inspect. I inform them that I would prefer not to dole out thousands of dollars of my own money for last-minute changes to travel arrangements because of their failure, but understand if ordered I can financially do so. Since my leave was approved by the commanding officer to miss an underway, I'd like verbiage from the commanding officer that my leave has been rescinded, recalling me. And if I receive such, it'll make me question my dedication to re-enlisting in a Navy that doesn't care about my financial well-being, meaning I'll leave the 6 months earlier than they expected when I get out of the Navy instead of re-enlist, and won't return with signed re-enlistment papers. They balked, of course, and had me report the day my leave was originally planned to end. They decided I'd catch a ride with a water taxi and all the senior officer inspectors for the hour trip to meet the ship. Sounded interesting. The stinger? I asked them what I should wear for the water taxi ride, as all my uniforms were on the ship. They freaked out and asked why all my uniforms were on the ship. Naturally, I explained that I was ordered to do so by my supervisor and received a counseling shit for not having left all my uniforms on the ship previously. My options? Some recently cleaned coveralls. I'd taken them home for laundry, ensuring I'd kept 2 pairs on the ship as required for sea bag rules from before my leave, or my civilian clothes. Why? Because that's what I was told to do the last time a shipboard uniform use issue came up. So yeah, there I was, a junior E5 in civilian clothes on board a chartered water taxi with a bunch of 04, 05, 06s in their uniforms at 5 in the morning on the way to redo a previously failed inspection. I just want to be the fly on the wall and know what they thought when they had to charter this water taxi with OP in civilian clothing. I mean, how hilarious is it that they failed an inspection and they're having these people come right back out to re-inspect things, something as basic as failing like a bag check, and they have to do so on the ride over with somebody who's in civilian clothes. That's not supposed to happen. Is that not a damning endorsement? Rex Canis FL commented, "Did they pass the re-inspection? Were they dinged for you being out of uniform?" OP responded saying, "We did indeed pass the re-inspection. Luckily, as I wasn't planned to be a part of the upcoming deployment, they didn't tag me in to help with the re-inspect, but I got to be a real watchstander while the inspection team ran emergency drills on a simulated watch team." I actually never heard another word about the uniforms issue again. But the supervisor who wrote me up previously seemed much more short-tempered with me for the next week, and I was told by other coworkers he was stuck on one-on-one meetings with Chief for a few hours over the past week. Not often we'd get kicked out of the office, so boss and boss's boss could have it to themselves for a private meeting. So this was an oddity to them. Our next story is, want it done by the book? Fine, I'll follow every rule. So I work at a company that prides itself on having a detailed, overly complicated policy manual for everything. We've got rules for rules, basically. My manager, let's call him Dave, is the kind of guy who loves micromanaging. He would constantly hover over our shoulders, pointing out every tiny mistake we made, saying, "If it's in the manual, you must follow it." One day, Dave sent me an urgent email asking me to finish a big project before the end of the day. Normally I would do it my usual way, efficiently and with a bit of common sense, but Dave insisted that I strictly adhere to the manual since it was a high visibility project and he didn't want any mistakes. Oh, Dave, you shouldn't have said that. I pulled out the manual and went full compliance mode. 1. Every procedure, no matter how small, was followed to the letter. Normally, I would skip pointless steps like writing a detailed log for every 10-minute task. Not this time. I logged everything. Starting a document, log it. Saving the file, log it again. Changing font size, yep, logged. Number 2, requests for approvals? Oh, absolutely. The manual says certain steps need managerial sign-off, so I emailed Dave at least 5 times throughout the day for approvals. "Hey Dave, just confirming, font size 12 is acceptable? Please reply so I can continue." "Hi Dave, should I use blue headers or red headers as per policy section 14.3.2? Number 3, breaks were strictly enforced. Policy states we get 2 15-minute breaks and 1 1-hour lunch. Normally I would work through a bit of lunch to get things done, but not today. At 12 sharp, I dropped everything and left my desk. I also spent 15 minutes at exactly 10 and 3 o'clock resting. Number 4, every department had to be involved. The manual said I needed a sign-off from IT, HR, and marketing for certain sections, even though they had nothing to do with the project. I looped them in formal requests, dragging out the timeline. By the end of the day, the project wasn't finished. I spent so much time complying with the manual that I didn't even get halfway through. Dave was furious and asked why it wasn't done. I calmly explained that I followed every single policy and procedure in the manual, just like he instructed. I even showed him the email chain proving he'd approved my steps. After that, Dave stopped breathing down my neck and started letting me work how I wanted. Lesson learned. Sometimes, the best way to fix a broken system is to show exactly how broken it is. Do people find that most places that have these detailed steps will have little policies or like rules or guidelines that are really more of just best practices? Stuff that's like, it would be nice if you notated these things that you did or had a log, but let's be real, most people probably aren't going to do it and it's not really going to affect things if you don't. But if somebody like Dave makes a big enough fuss, you can certainly gum up the whole system and slow it right down by complying. Captain Bao Bao commented, "A French sociologist made a study in the second half of the 20th century. It was called the bureaucracy. He concluded that the bureaucratic rules were there to protect the bureaucrat, and that if he has to apply them, nigh work would be done. In practice, OSS made sabotage manuals for freedom fighters detailing that concept. Contest all decisions and apply all stupid rules. When it all goes down, remember that it was their decision and that you warned them." Pretty sure the sociologists have seen that manual. I've seen France paralyzed with customs in Pearly Strike. They applied the book by the letter. Every car and truck was deeply verified at all frontiers. Lines stretched on several kilometers in and out of the country. It lasts 24 hours. But the government gave them what they asked to never do it again. This next story is, I'm only ringing it up exactly as you ordered it. One of my jobs is in what is apparently one of 3 sources of food, alongside Cane's and Chick-fil-A, in a town of about 150,000 people. I don't know if we're just on a cosmic nexus of stupidity or what, but I would say maybe 50 to 70% of our customers suffer from some form of illiteracy. One of these is coupon illiteracy. So many customers do not know what those symbols on the coupon mean aside from the numbers, if they see them. So when we have a deal going on, sometimes the deal is actually better than the coupon offer. Thus, I end up charging someone more because I have to price override the item to use the coupon, which actually means it went up in price. It's what the customer wants. Other customers think they can beat us by ordering a cheaper item, then making a bunch of modifications to transform it into something else. I would like a veggie sub, but can you please add ham to it? Don't want to just order a ham sub? Have fun, that's an additional charge to you. Hi, I want a chicken sandwich, but can you replace the chicken with steak? Okay, so you want a steak sandwich. No, I want a chicken, but with steak instead. Well, if you want to pay the substitution charge, what am I to go with? I mean, you don't work here and you said this was how you want it made. P.S. Why is so much R&D spent making an easily comprehended menu when nobody ever sees it? The literate few look at the dinky little nutritional and allergen information and say we need a proper menu. Never mind the big bold menu that is literally right in front of their freaking faces. I really don't envy anybody working any kind of fast food or retail. I think the real problem is OP's going to say, oh, it seems like 50 to 70% of the clientele, but that's just because the ones that cause issues are going to be that 50 to 70%. And then you mix in the few that maybe you're just having a rough day and go, oh, sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. I find that those who are the most wrong oftentimes end up being the loudest voices. Moist Crack commented, you're right on the money. More than 20% of adults in the USA are illiterate. 2022 data. Edit, I just checked the data for the EU, between 20 to 25%. Take that, USA, we're leading this race. Yiblets replied, one of the most vivid arithmetic failings displayed by Americans occurred in the early 1980s, when the A&W restaurant chain released a new hamburger to rival the McDonald's Quarter Pounder. With a third pound of beef, the A&W burger had more meat than the Quarter Pounder. In taste tests, customers preferred A&W's burger. And it was less expensive. A lavish A&W television and radio marketing campaign cited these benefits. Yet instead of leaping at the great value, customers snubbed it. Only when the company held customer focus groups did it become clear why. The third pounder presented the American public with a test in fractions, and we failed. Misunderstanding the value of 1/3, customers believed they were being overcharged. Why, they asked the researchers, should they pay the same amount for 1/3 of a pound of meat as they did for 1/4 pound of meat at McDonald's? The 4 1/4 larger than the 3 1/3 led them astray. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.